Yes, so what I was explaining here is that the Bible itself has two testaments, the Old Testament and the New Testament. And there is, in the New Testament, again, four divisions of the Bible books. There is a group called the Gospels, and those are four. There is Matthew, and there is, talk to me, Mark, and there is Luke, and there is John. Thank you very much. So there's four Gospels that are there. And then the other category is called Acts. There's the Acts of the Apostles, and then there is the Epistles, and then finally there is the Apocalypse, which is a reference to the book of Revelation. Now, this class pertains the Gospels, but of the four Gospels, this class is concerned with only three, which we call the Synoptic Gospels. And these three are Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So these three are Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So this is what this class is concerned with. So we are going to spend time looking at the three Gospels, which we call the Synoptic Gospels. Now, these Gospels, the three, are called synoptic because they share a similar point of view, and often they recount the same events in the life of Jesus Christ, with many similarities in wording, in sequence, and in structure. So they are called synoptics because they have a lot of similarities in wording, in sequence, and in structure. So when we talk about synoptic, why are they called synoptic gospels? Matthew, Mark, and Luke are called synoptic because they present a unified perspective on the life, teachings, and ministry of Jesus. They present a unified perspective. They are called synoptic. The word synoptic itself is from the Greek word synoptikos, which means seeing together. And for some scholars, it is seeing together through the same eye. So they are synoptic because they see, they view together through the same eye. And this is so because of their common content and narrative style. The similarities among these three Gospels suggest that they are interrelated. It also suggests that they probably used or shared the same sources and the same tradition. That is why they are called synoptic, and that is why they see things together through the same eye. Now, in contrast to the synoptic gospels, we have the Gospel of John, as you are already aware, which is not in the same class because John tends to present a distinct narrative and theological perspective on Jesus' life and teachings. So his perspective seems to be quite distinct and different from the perspectives of the three that we call synoptic gospels. Now, a little bit of depth in each one of them, even though we are going to dedicate the next about 3 weeks to 2-3 weeks talking about each one of the Gospels, but here is an overview. Matthew, who happens to be the first in the New Testament, and being the first doesn't mean Matthew was written first. It's just canonically classed as the first, probably because of the information that we find in there. We'll talk about that further on. Matthew portrays Jesus as the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecies and the Messiah, the long-awaited Messiah of the Jewish people. That is what Matthew tends to focus on. That is what Matthew tends to be concerned about. A portrayal of Jesus as a fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecies. That is why when you read Matthew, you will often find him making quotes from the Old Testament, and he will almost often again use the words so that it may be fulfilled that, and then he will take a scripture or a quote from the Old Testament. So he pictures Jesus and he paints a picture of Jesus who is a fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies, and a Jesus who is again a Messiah that the Jews had been waiting for. Another thing about Matthew, his gospel is known for its emphasis on Jesus' teachings. He includes a lot of teachings that Jesus gave throughout his ministry, including what he calls the Sermon on the Mount, and again, the Great Commission, teachings that are kind of unique to him. So he is concerned with the teachings of Jesus, and he emphasizes that. And again, when you look at his structure, when you look at the structure of Matthew, you will find that he includes extensive teaching sections and follows a roughly chronological order of events in the life of Jesus Christ. That is Matthew. Now, a bit about Mark as well. When you read Mark, you will find that his focus is on presenting Jesus as the Son of God. And he emphasizes the actions of Jesus. He emphasizes the miracles. He emphasizes also the suffering of Jesus. His focus is on Jesus as the Son of God. You will note that Mark actually has the shortest account. Mark is the shortest of the Gospels and is characterized by a sense of immediacy and a sense of urgency. You will find that in your reading. He will use the words immediately, almost more often than the other gospel writers, because things are happening quite swiftly in this gospel. Things are happening quite quickly. It is the shortest, but characterized by a sense of immediacy and a sense of urgency. When you look at the structure of Mark, you will find that the narrative is fast-paced, and the narrative focuses on the deeds of Jesus, often highlighting his authority and the mystery of his identity. You will find these things in your reading of Mark. A very fast-paced narrative, things happening suddenly and immediately with a sense of urgency. And you will find a focus on the deeds of Jesus, often highlighting his power and his authority, and also the mystery of his identity. Now, what of Luke? You will find in your reading of Luke that he offers a detailed and orderly account of Jesus' life and ministry. He emphasizes themes such as compassion, social justice, and there's also a massive inclusivity in Jesus' message. He tends to include people that were in the margins of life, people that were called outcasts. You find the outcasts, you find the foreigners, you find the Samaritans even being called good, even though they were a people that were not favored by the Jews at the time. But in the teachings of Luke, you find one of the parables that is called the Good Samaritan, where he can give a picture of a good Samaritan in a context where Jews thought there is nothing good that can come out of a Samaritan. So in his account, Luke includes these unique parables, like the Good Samaritan, unique parables like one of them, the prodigal son, which is unique to Luke. You don't find that in the other Gospels. So Luke has a slant towards people in the margins of life, and he is quite inclusive in his writing. Now, looking at the structure of Luke again, you will find there's also detailed narratives there, and emphasis in those narratives, and emphasis on the historical and the social context of Jesus' life, the historical and the social context of Jesus' life. Okay, let me stop here in case there is a question, so that we can take that and discuss it. Any questions so far? No question. Any question online?
From my side, no questions so far, Doc.
Thank you. Mabunda, if you can raise your volume a little bit, that can help us.
Okay, I'll try that.
Thank you very much. I can hear you now. Okay, there being no question at this point, let us look at some distinctions and interconnections among the three Gospels that are our concern. Now, while the Synoptic Gospels share much content and often recount similar events, they also present unique perspectives and details. And those we are going to look at now. There is an element of uniqueness in each of the three Gospels, though they are synoptic in most of its material. Now, the common ground that you find among the three, the interconnections that are there, might be a suggestion that the three Gospels had some shared sources, or probably shared oral traditions. That is why you find Matthew writes about this, and you read Luke, you find the same thing recorded. You go to Mark, you find the very same thing recorded. Probably they, in their writings, had sources that they shared. If Mark has a source and the next day, Luke finds the same source and copies from it, and then another day, Matthew has the same source and copies from it, you are bound to find similarities in their writings. So there's a scholarly suggestion that these three gospel writers had some shared sources, or they had some shared oral traditions.